Judge mocks single dad veteran in court, shocked to learn he's a hidden legal genius. Part 1, 1,000 words, realistic and heart-touching tone. Story, The Courtroom Awakening. It was another gray morning in the small-town courthouse. The wooden benches creaked as people shuffled in, mostly bored, waiting for their cases to be called. But sitting quietly in the back row was Ethan Cole, a single dad and a decorated Marine veteran who had seen more than most people could imagine. He wasn't there for trouble. He was there for justice. His hands were rough and scarred reminders of Afghanistan. His eyes, calm but deep, carried the weight of sleepless nights and lost brothers. He wore a cheap suit, a little too tight, and held a worn-out folder filled with documents. Inside were papers proving he'd been wronged by a company that fired him unfairly after his deployment. He couldn't afford an attorney, so he decided to represent himself. When his name was called, Ethan stood tall. Case 1427, Cole vs. Redwood Logistics, the clerk announced. At the bench sat Judge Meredith Wallace, a woman in her 50s known for being sharp-tongued and impatient. She looked at Ethan over her glasses and sighed. "Mr. Cole," she said, flipping through his file, "you're representing yourself?" "Yes, Your Honor," Ethan replied calmly. She smirked. "Well, that's brave. Let's hope you know what you're doing." The courtroom chuckled. Ethan didn't respond. He simply placed his folder on the table and waited. Across from him sat Mr. Landon, the company's attorney, slick suit, expensive watch, and a smirk that screamed arrogance. "Your Honor, this is a waste of court time," Landon began. "My client followed every legal procedure. This man's claims are baseless." Ethan looked up, his voice steady. "Your Honor, may I speak?" "Proceed," Judge Wallace said, half distracted. Ethan stood, opened his folder, and began to outline point by point the timeline of his deployment, his return, and how his employer had violated the Service Members Civil Relief Act, which protects veterans from being terminated while on duty. At first, the judge wasn't paying much attention. But as Ethan spoke, her pen stopped moving. His words were clear, precise, and backed with legal citations not read from notes, but recalled from memory. "Wait," she interrupted. "How do you know these statutes by heart?" Ethan's tone remained humble. "I used to study law, ma'am. Before I enlisted." A ripple of surprise spread through the courtroom. Even the defense attorney looked uneasy. Ethan continued, laying out each violation and attaching supporting documents. When he presented his case law references, all correct and relevant, the judge leaned forward. "Mr. Cole," she said slowly, "are you telling me you have formal legal training?" Ethan nodded slightly. "Yes, Your Honor. I was 2 semesters away from finishing my Juris Doctor when I joined the Marines. I never went back, life had other plans." The judge's expression shifted, curiosity now replacing mockery. "You served?" she asked softly. 3 tours, he replied. "Lost a few good men. I came back, tried to rebuild. Raising my daughter now, on my own." For a moment, the courtroom was silent. The once mocking laughter had died down completely. The defense attorney tried to interrupt. "Your Honor, this is irrelevant emotional appeal." But the judge cut him off sharply. "Sit down, counselor." Ethan handed her a final piece of evidence, an internal email showing that his firing had been planned during his deployment. It was undeniable proof. The judge read it twice. Her eyes widened. This is damning," she whispered. She turned to Landon. "Mr. Landon, unless your client has a miracle defense, this case is over." The attorney stammered, Your Honor, we might need to." "Enough," she said firmly. Case ruled in favor of Mr. Cole. Ethan didn't celebrate. He just nodded respectfully. "Thank you, Your Honor." As he gathered his papers, Judge Wallace called out to him. "Mr. Cole, one last question." He turned back. "Why didn't you tell anyone about your background?" He smiled faintly. "Didn't think it mattered, ma'am. I just wanted to do what's right." She paused, visibly moved. "You remind me," she said quietly, "of what this courtroom is supposed to stand for." Ethan left the courtroom to find his little daughter waiting outside with a drawing she'd made of him, holding scales of justice. Did we win, Daddy? She asked, her eyes wide. He bent down and hugged her tightly. Yeah, sweetheart. We did. As they walked out into the sunlight, the same people who had laughed earlier now watched in silence, some even clapping softly. And Judge Wallace, standing at her window, whispered to herself. The law never forgets a man like him.